Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're jumping straight into some really compelling research. It looks at a completely new angle for employee ethics training.
Yeah, think mobile games, but with AI characters you actually talk to. Sounds a bit sci-fi almost.
It really does. And for you listening, if you want to get up to speed quickly and really understand this, well, this deep dive is your shortcut.
Absolutely. We're digging into a specific research article. It's called A Mobile Contextualized Educational Game Framework with ChatGPT Interactive Scaffolding for Employee Ethics Training. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, just a bit. But our mission today is pretty clear. Figure out how this game actually works, what the researchers found out, and, what it could all mean for teaching ethics at work down the line.
Right. And have you ever stopped to think, could something like ChatGPT really make learning about ethics, well, not just less boring, but genuinely engaging and maybe even more effective?
That's the core question. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we start?
Well, the research really kicks off by underlining just how crucial employee ethics are. It's not a nice to have.
Right. It impacts everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking company culture, how people act, their performance, even the bottom line, the profits. This isn't just my opinion. That's drawing on research from Alexandre in 2023.
And it's a real concern, isn't it? I remember seeing somewhere that even college students feel, unprepared for ethical stuff when they start working.
That's right. There's a study, McGuire Associates back in 2012, that highlighted that very point. And then you've got Gates and others in 2021 stressing the need to actually teach this stuff to new hires effectively.
It's not just about avoiding massive scandals either, is it? The scope seems broader.
Oh, definitely. FAM and others pointed out in 2022 it includes things like basic workplace etiquette, professional communication, maybe even how you dress. It's quite wide-ranging.
That makes sense. And learning this, it seems like just reading rules isn't enough. You need scenarios.
Precisely. Court and others in 2021 really emphasized that analyzing specific situations is super effective for ethics education. You learn by grappling with those tricky, real-world choices. Okay,
so how do you create those tricky situations effectively, especially for lots of employees?
Well, that's where game-based learning comes into the picture now. It's a strategy that's gaining a lot of traction.
Right, because games can be more engaging.
Exactly. Hauser work in 2023 suggests it boosts engagement and, crucially, helps people actually apply what they learn later. That's the learning transfer part.
And I guess games are perfect for simulating those workplace dilemmas you mentioned.
Absolutely. You can, set up these scenarios, let people make choices, and then importantly, let them see the consequences, good or bad.
All in a safe space, though, without real-world fallout.
Exactly. It's like practice. Chain, Fort, Schreier. They've all written about this power of games for developing these kinds of competencies.
Now, this specific research team, they'd already experimented with games for ethics, right? Something about swiping.
Yeah, they had a pilot study called Newbie Swipe Ethics, Shannon Hill 2023. It used that familiar swipe left, swipe right mechanic like dating apps for making quick ethical judgments.
Interesting. How did that go?
It got positive feedback initially. People seemed to like the format. But they realized something was missing. Learners needed more support right when they were making the decision. Real-time help.
Okay. That scaffolding idea you mentioned earlier, support when you need it.
Precisely. And that's the link to ChatGPT.
Because ChatGPT can hold a conversation, act like a helper.
Exactly. BizWes in 2023 highlighted its potential for simulating human chat and acting as a learning aid. So the researchers thought, what about using game characters, NPCs, for this?
NPCs? Non-player characters. The characters already in games. Using them as teachers, essentially.
Sort of, yeah. As guides, providing that scaffolding. But there's a problem.
What's that?
Using real people to play those NPC roles, responding in real time. It's just not practical. Hugely resource intensive, takes too much time. Chan and others pointed this out in 2023.
Right, you couldn't scale that up easily.
Not at all. So this is the clever part of this study. They decided to use ChatGPT to be the NPC, to provide that real-time scaffolding automatically.
Okay, wow. So AI playing the role of the helpful colleague.
Pretty much. And they set up a comparison. One group got this ChatGPT-powered NPC. The other got help in a more traditional way, access to documents.
Let's get into that. How did the actual game Newbie Swipe Ethics with ChatGPT work for the players?
Okay, so the core gameplay was the same. You're the new employee. You face ethical dilemmas, swipe left or right to decide, earn rank stars for good choices.
Standard game loop. But the help was different.
Right. Two groups. Group 1, the document scaffolding group, had a hint button. Tap that, and you get access to a document with relevant ethics information. You can see it in Figure 3 of the paper.
Okay, like a digital cheat sheet.
Kinda, yeah. Group 2, the ChatGPT-based NPC group, didn't have that button. Instead, at the end of each simulated workday in the game, a chat window popped up.
And that's where they talked to the AI.
Exactly. They could chat with a virtual friend named Yuna, who's actually ChatGPT behind the scenes. That's shown in Figure 4. They could ask her about the dilemmas they faced, reflect on their choices.
So Yuna could give advice based on the ethics rules. How did they make sure she knew the right stuff?
Good question. They used a tool called ChatPDF. Basically, they fed the specific ethics training documents into ChatPDF, creating a, tailored knowledge base for ChatGPT.
Ah, I see. So ChatGPT wasn't just pulling answers from the whole internet. It was focused on the course material.
Supposedly, yes. That was the intention, to keep Yuna's advice relevant and accurate based on the provided ethics knowledge. Ayub and Khadija and others have explored using ChatPDF like this.
But did it sound like talking to an AI, or did they make it feel more natural?
They tried to make it more natural. They used a text substitution thing. So if ChatGPT generated a response that sounded too robotic, based on the input document, the system would automatically change it to something more from my understanding, or start with hey instead of something formal.
Clever. Trying to make Yuna feel more like a peer.
Exactly. More relatable, less like a know-it-all bot.
Okay, so they set up these two different ways of getting help in the game. What happened when they tested it? What did they find?
Right, the findings. This is where it gets really interesting. First off, learning achievement. They measured this with tests before and after playing the game.
Could the game help people learn?
Yes. Both groups, the document group and the Unichat GPT group, showed significant improvement from the pre-test to the post-test. So, good news there. The game format with support did help them learn the ethics content.
Okay, that's positive. But was one group better than the other? Did the AI help more?
Well, that's the surprising part. No, there was no statistically significant difference in learning achievement between the two groups.
Wow, really? So having the fancy AI chat didn't actually lead to better test scores compared to just having the document?
Not according to their results, no. Both methods seemed equally effective in terms of the final learning outcome measured by the tests. You can see the scores in Table 2 and 3 in the paper.
Huh, okay. Why do you think that might be?
That's a key question. Maybe the way the ethical choices were presented didn't require that kind of conversational feedback. Or perhaps, and we'll get to this, maybe the students didn't quite know how to use Yuna effectively to deepen their understanding.
That makes sense. So learning improved in both cases, just not more with the AI. What about engagement? Surely the AI chat made it more engaging.
Well, they measured engagement using flow, that feeling of being fully immersed. And both groups reported significantly high flow levels, way above the midpoint of the scale.
So both versions were engaging.
Yes, highly engaging. But again, just like with learning achievement, there was no significant difference in flow between the document group and the ChatGPT group. Table 4 shows this.
Okay, so high engagement across the board, but the AI didn't add extra engagement over the document button in this setup. What about motivation?
Same story, really. They measured motivation, and both groups scored significantly higher than the average. The game itself was motivated.
Regardless of the support type.
Seems so. And again, no significant difference in motivation between the two groups. It's Table 5.
Interesting pattern. Learning, engagement, motivation all improved, but the AI didn't significantly outperform the simpler document approach on these measures. What about downsides? Did the AI make people anxious, maybe?
Now here we see a slight nuance. They measured anxiety too. The document group actually reported significantly lower anxiety than the midpoint score.
So having the document readily available was calming.
It seems that way, yes. The ChatGPT group, however, their anxiety levels weren't significantly different from the midpoint. They weren't more anxious, but they didn't show that same reduction in anxiety as the document group.
Okay.
But crucially, when comparing the two groups directly, there's no statistically significant difference in anxiety between them. See Table 6.
Got it. So maybe the AI wasn't anxiety-inducing, but it also didn't reduce anxiety quite like just having the info there in a document did.
Fascinating. It really is. And to understand why we saw these results, especially the lack of difference in learning, we need to look at how students actually used the help they were given.
Right. How do they interact with the document versus with Yuna?
Okay, for the document group, analysis showed most students, about 86%, found the documents helpful.
And when did they use them?
Mostly, either right at the start, presumably to get oriented, or when they got stuck on a particularly tough decision in the game. Pretty logical usage.
Makes sense, like looking up a rule when you're unsure. What about the unit group?
Here, it's a bit different. Fewer students, only 63%, reported finding UNA helpful. That's quite a drop from the 86% in the document group.
Why was that?
Well, some students explicitly said they just weren't sure how to ask UNA good questions to get the help they needed.
Ah, the interaction problem again. Having the tool isn't enough if you don't know how to use it effectively.
Exactly. And when the researchers actually looked at the chat logs, this is really revealing.
What did they find?
They found that only about half, 54%, of the questions students asked UNA were actually about ethics.
Only half. What was the other half?
Almost half, 46%, were unrelated questions. Students were asking about the game's work schedule, about other characters, sometimes just expressing feelings like I'm tired or making small talk.
Wow. So they weren't always using UNA as an ethics tutor, but more like a general chatbot. Or maybe even just venting.
It seems that way, almost like they saw her as this all-knowing assistant or just someone to chat with, rather than a focused learning tool for ethics.
Did UNA handle that okay? Does she give good ethics advice when asked?
Generally, yes. When students asked direct ethics questions, UNA, via ChatPDF, usually gave accurate information based on the documents.
However,
sometimes she generated knowledge or answers that went beyond the specific documents she was supposed to be limited to.
So the chat PDF wasn't a perfect container. It sometimes brought in outside info.
Apparently so, which could be confusing, maybe even counterproductive if that outside info wasn't quite aligned with the training's specific focus.
Yeah, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? You want helpfulness, but also accuracy and focus.
Precisely. And all of the usage patterns, the off-topic questions, the AI sometimes going off script, leads directly into the study's limitations and what needs to happen next.
Right. Which is always important for understanding where the research stands. What did they suggest?
Well, a big one was finding better ways to guide students on how to ask effective questions. Don't just give them the AI chat, but maybe provide example questions or prompts within the game itself.
That makes a lot of sense, like teaching them how to use the tool.
Exactly. They also pointed out, quite rightly, that their participants were mostly young adults, aged 20-30.
So the results might be different with older employees. Or younger ones.
Could be. They stressed the need for research across different age groups to see how acceptance and interaction styles might vary.
What about other factors, like gender?
They mentioned that too. They noted the gender mix in their study and suggested future research should look into whether gender influences how people interact with the game and their perspectives on ethics itself. It's a potential factor.
And did they consider if people had used ChatGPT before the study? That seems relevant.
Good point. They actually acknowledged they didn't assess prior ChatGPT experience. That could definitely influence how comfortable and skilled someone was interacting with UNA. So that's another thing for future studies to track.
Right. And these studies are often quite short. Did they mention that?
Yes, they did. It was a relatively brief intervention. They highlighted the need for longer studies to see if the learning sticks, if attitudes change over time, and if actual ethical behavior is impacted.
And maybe talk to the participants more.
Exactly. They suggested adding qualitative interviews in the future to get deeper insights into the players' experiences and thought processes.
So lots of avenues for future work. Did they suggest trying different types of games too?
They did. They proposed exploring things like visual novels or maybe more complex role-playing games, integrating ChatGPT NPCs into those formats to see how that changes things.
So the takeaway isn't that AI NPCs are bad, but that we need to be smarter about how we integrate them.
That seems to be the conclusion. There's clear potential here, but just dropping a chatbot into a game isn't a magic bullet for boosting learning outcomes, at least not compared to well-structured traditional resources like documents in this case. Refining the guidance and interaction design is key.
That's a great summary. So while both methods, the document and the AI NPC, help students learn in this ethics game, the AI introduces these really interesting challenges around how people actually talk to it and whether they know how to ask the right questions.
Precisely. And for you listening, this deep dive gives you a snapshot of the cutting edge in educational tech. It's about grappling with how to make vital training, like ethics, more engaging without losing effectiveness.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? As AI gets more sophisticated, how will these kinds of interactive learning tools change professional development? How will we learn about making tough ethical calls at work?
It's a fascinating question. What kinds of virtual colleagues might we end up learning from in the future? could they really help us grow ethically? Definitely something to mull over.
Indeed. Lots to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time.